Welcome to Medical Matters Weekly with Dr. Trey Dobson, presented by Southwestern Vermont Healthcare and Catamount Access Television.
Well, hello, everyone. Today is January 5th, 2022. I'm Trey Dobson, Chief Medical Officer at Southwestern Vermont Medical Center and an emergency medicine physician with Dartmouth Hitchcock Health. And this is Medical Matters Weekly. In fact, this is the first episode of season 2. So thank you for joining us. It is a show about the aspects of healthcare that matter to you most. My guest today is Larry Cole, a former police detective and COVID survivor, here to tell us about his experience. Larry, welcome, and thank you so much for joining the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Where are you right now? Where are you videoing in from?
I'm at home.
Great. Okay. So let's just start a little bit about you first to sort of lay the groundwork. Talk to us about your background and where you grew up.
So I was born in Bennington. At the age of 17, my family, me included, moved to Phoenix, Arizona. We were there for about 7 years. Graduated from a high school in the Phoenix area. I did my senior year out there. At the age of 19, I joined the Phoenix Police Department, and I was with that department until I moved back here in 1978 to join and help with the family business. In 1980, I was kind of missing police work, so I was hired by the Bennington Police Department on a part-time status. So I was a part-time officer for 21 years, while at the same time involved with and running the family business. 2001, we sold the family business, and I was hired as a full-time police officer with the town of Bennington in 2001. And I was there for 19 years in a full-time status until I retired in June of 2020.
Wow. I'm going to tell you something funny. I haven't got a chance to tell you. It's not that funny, but it's funny to me. I started here in 2005, and I was working in the emergency department one day, very early in my start here, probably within the first 3 weeks. And you came in and were talking to me about a situation. And I thought you actually worked for the hospital and worked in the emergency department. I thought, wow, that's so cool. They have their own detective here right in the emergency department, until I later found out that was not the case. But you were so comfortable and friendly, and you had a badge on of some type. And I won't forget that. It was an interesting situation, to say the least. So tell us a little bit about your family then.
So this coming May, I will have been married for 41 years to my wife, Mary. Wow. We have 2 children, 2 boys, 33 and 29. They're both married, and they both have a child. So we have 2 daughter-in-laws and 2 grandchildren, a boy and a girl. And we're extremely fortunate because we're all within walking distance of each other.
Wow, that's great.
It is.
So I'm just going to jump right into this a little bit. For those of you who are not viewing and are listening on the podcast, I can tell you, Larry looks great. He looks just like I have always known him and remember him. However, he went through a really rough spell, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So tell us how you first learned about COVID and what those early days were like.
Well, I certainly was aware that COVID was going through our community. And that brings us to December of 2020. I started feeling poorly. I had a temperature. I had quite a cough, and I started noticing that I was having difficulty breathing. So I went to the rescue squad and had a COVID test, and that was on December 19th, and that test came back positive. At that time, the deal was you kind of stayed home and kind of, dealt with it, see if you could get through it. So that's what I was working towards. As the days moved forward, my symptoms got progressively worse until early in the morning, Christmas morning, December 25th. I was just having a hard time breathing. My temp was 103.8. And I said to my wife, I said, Mary, I can't do this anymore. So I called the ER, because I have a lot of connections there. And I spoke to the charge nurse, told him how I was feeling, and asked him what I should do. And he said, get your butt up here. We'll get you right in. So my wife dropped me at the front door, and that's the last time I saw her for 18 days. Got right into the ER immediately. I was swarmed with medical staff. They came in, they did an x-ray of my lungs right there in the exam room. And before too long, I was admitted, and I was first placed in a negative pressure room in West Wing. I was there for probably a day, and my demand for oxygen kept increasing. And I was then moved to East Wing, which has a more modern or updated oxygen delivery system. And I was there for about a day. And then they came in and told me that my demand for oxygen was exceeding what they could give me in East Wing. So that's where I ended up in ICU. And I was in ICU, I believe, for 16 days. Never, thank God, I never ended up on a ventilator. And that was something that really concerned me. And I asked a lot of questions. I wanted to be very involved in my medical care. So I asked questions, and I got answers. Many times the answers were, we don't know. There's no playbook. And, it's still today. COVID affects people in so many different ways. How it affected me is not how it's going to affect the next person. And, we were early on into this, but yeah, it was quite the experience. I went in there at age 66. Prior to that, I had spent one night in the hospital in my entire life. I think I was like 12 years old. So it was a totally new experience for me.
Talk about, I'm interested in those first days right before you came to the hospital. And then when you came in the hospital, you've obviously faced incredible situations, dangers and fears in your line of work, but this, I'm sure, was something completely different. Were you nervous? Was your wife nervous? What was going on in your head?
At home, I don't think I was nervous. I just thought that I could go to the hospital. They'd give me some kind of injections or whatever. And I wasn't even thinking that I would be admitted when I went there. Right. I was expecting some kind of intervention and send me home, and that didn't happen. So like I said, this whole hospital thing, being admitted, was totally new to me, and I didn't know where I was going. But when I was transferred from one room to the other because of my demands for oxygen, then I became concerned. And then when they came in and told me that my best bet was to go to ICU, that was kind of set me back. Right. And so then go ahead.
You're a pretty, you're a healthy guy. You're not 20 anymore, but you're very active. Did you have people questioning, like, why did you get sick? And also, were people wondering, what did you do to get this? Because this, unbelievably, was only a year ago, but our mindset was very different a year ago in society.
Yeah, I had nothing. I was in good physical condition. I was active. I've never smoked. The only thing that I had as a negative was my age. I was 66, but there was no underlying reason for me to have gotten so sick. It's just luck of the draw. And to go along with this, my entire family tested positive. My wife, my two sons, my two daughter-in-laws, and my then 5-month-old grandson and 2-year-old granddaughter everyone tested positive. Um, Fortunately, the children didn't have any symptoms. My wife had maybe the sniffles, and my two sons and their daughter-in-laws had like cold symptoms, and a couple of them lost their sense of taste and smell, but nothing really put them out. And, I was totally the opposite.
And if you're just joining us, and we're thinking about the time frame here, we're talking about a year ago, a little over a year ago, vaccines were not available, almost getting ready to be available, but not available. And folks were really succumbing to the disease. And that's what we're talking about here with Larry. So let's talk a little bit more about your hospital experience. I too have not been a patient in a hospital, but work in one, and I'm around one, as you have been around one. I imagine it gets pretty boring at times.
Well, it was, and part of that boredom was I had a mask on with a high flow oxygen, which is noisy. I had a television, but I could not hear it because the oxygen flowing into me took away my ability to hear that type of thing. So that really added to the boredom. I was able to get a tablet sent from home, but I had to hold it up to my ear, but, and then of course I was very interested in all the medical things. So I was trying to do my own research, and, I really learned to stay away from the general media and only focus on, reliable sources, like, John Hopkins and Mayo Clinic and all of that, because if you read some of that other stuff, it can be way wrong and get you in a wrong position. And speaking of the wrong position, I'm usually a very positive guy, but I noticed myself slipping, and I knew that I was having bad thoughts. I got to the point where I didn't think that I was going to come out of there alive. And fortunately, I realized that, and I was still in a position to talk myself out of it. But I had many conversations with my nurses, and they helped me so much. I mean, I think they realized how scared I was, how lonely I was. And there were times when they had the time that they would just sit on the edge of the bed or pull up a chair, and we just talk. And it didn't have to be about my situation. We just talked about, things in general. And that was a huge help. And that's something that I don't think people expect to get when you're being treated and you're seriously ill. You just think it's all black and white and all business, and it wasn't. I even had Dunkin' Donuts coffee brought into me, and I have a thing for the Boston cream donuts, and they might have shown up at my bedside a couple of times. And that is the type of caring and care that I received, and it was so good for me emotionally. And you got to have that to help yourself get better too.
Absolutely. In fact, it's almost equally as important as any type of medical treatment. When you're having that feeling that, we call it despair, you've got to have others start to intervene. I've talked to some COVID survivors who felt that. I've talked to others who felt more shame, which is the unfortunate thing that happens around certain illnesses. I think today, a lot of that is gone as people see how widespread the disease is, that anyone can get it, no matter what you're doing. But I can imagine a year ago, some of those thoughts probably also creeped into your head as you were trying to deal with the fact that you were in an ICU trying to get over this disease. But you did get over it. And talk to us about when you got discharged from the hospital, and then what happened.
So I was discharged right from the ICU to home on January 11th. My wife picked me up out in front, had a little fanfare going on out there. But so when I got home, I knew I was weak, but I didn't realize how weak I was. She drove into the garage, and we only have 2 steps to get up into the house. I couldn't do it. Fortunately, my 2 sons were here, and one got under each arm and basically helped or lifted me up those 2 steps and got me into the living room. I lost 22 pounds in 18 days. And I thought I was eating fairly well in there, but I didn't realize how much I had lost in weight wise, but my physical stamina. So I got planted on the sofa. For the first 2 months, I was on oxygen. For the first 30 days, I was on it 24/7. I had a machine sitting there, the nasal cannula, and that was my life for the first 30 days. For the first week or so, to even get up off of the sofa and walk 15 feet to the bathroom, I had to use a walker. It was a major undertaking to do something so simple. And, it just floored me of what I had become. And I just, when I have days where I'm kind of down because I'm not right yet, I look back to what I was when I came home a year ago, and I say, I've done pretty darn good.
Absolutely. So for the folks that are just joining us, what we're talking about here is a period of deconditioning that Larry went through, plus the fact that he had direct insult to his lungs from COVID itself. That's one of the things about the disease that make it so difficult. And some people take months to recover, as he did, and require that extra oxygenation. And I can imagine that was just depressing, but you got through that. And you talked about symptoms that you have now. Tell us, what symptoms do you have now, if any?
Oh, I do. So the primary symptoms I have are 3: shortness of breath, and that it's much, much, much better than it was a year ago. But basically, right now, I can do anything that I want to do. It just takes me longer to do it. Like I could walk quite a distance on the level, but you put a slight hill or an incline in front of me, and that takes its toll. Climbing stairs, that gets me. But I can do it. All I got to do is when I get to the top of the flight of stairs, I pause for a few moments, collect myself, and then keep going. So, as I tell people, I can live with the shortness of breath because I'm still doing anything that I want. It just takes me longer to do it. Something new for me is suffering from fatigue. I never was a guy to take naps or anything like that, but now for the last many months, I find that if I take a 30 to 45 minute nap early in the afternoon, it kind of energizes me and gets me further into the evening. So I can do that. I'm retired. I can do that. The biggest thing that is a challenge for me is a cough. And the cough is, it's very demoralizing. I don't have control over the cough, and it's not a tickle. It comes from down deep. And I have inflammation in my lungs as a result of COVID. The inflammation is causing this cough, like I said, which I can't control. So, picture yourself going out into the public and coughing deeply, many times in a row. It's embarrassing. People look at you, they think you're sick. I find myself, explaining to people, that ask that I'm not sick. It's a after effect of COVID. So for the last 10 months, I have been being treated, trying to find the right way method, process, procedure to get rid of that inflammation. And that is the one thing that really is affecting me now. It affects my daily life. Sometimes without the medication, I cough so much I have to go into the bedroom and lay down proning like I did in ICU to open up my lungs to help me stop this terrible cough. It's overwhelming at times, but it's under control right now because of the medication that I'm on.
You know, Larry, you just did an excellent job of describing some of the symptoms that I see in patients, actually younger patients in their 30s, some even their 20s, but generally in their 30s and 40s, who don't end up in the hospital. They chose not to be vaccinated, and they felt like that they were above the disease, and that if they did get it, it wouldn't be so bad. And they don't wind up in the hospital, yet they have these prolonged symptoms, months, and even are still having them, where they describe it that they just can't walk or run as well as they used to could, and it bothers them. It's their exercise capacity that's decreased, and maybe they didn't get very sick, and maybe they didn't end up in the hospital, but they're not where they were before, and that's why it's so important we do what we can to limit the effects through vaccination and boosting. Are you vaccinated now?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, as soon as it became available, I mean, I wanted to know, can I get it now? Because I was reading different things, and I'll have to tell you, I made a call to Dr. George's office.
Yes.
Simply, I wanted to ask the receptionist to ask her, given my present circumstances, is there any reason I should not? And it astounded me. Dr. George called me back, and we probably talked for like 15 minutes. And she assured me that it's no danger for me in my position or situation and to get it. So I got off the phone, and, I had to wait 60 days from my discharge, and I went right up there. So I got my first dose, I got my second dose, and then when the booster thing came out, I learned that in my particular situation, I was able to get a third full dose. So, because a booster is a half a dose, but I got a third full dose. So I'm vaccinated, and I'm boosted times 2.
Well, that is fantastic, and we want to spread that news, because that's what's going to keep people safe. As we see these COVID numbers just rising so dramatically over the past 3 weeks, with Omicron taking its foothold, we're not seeing quite that rise in hospitalizations, and that is primarily due to the effects of the vaccine, almost exclusively. It's not due to the fact that the virus is that less impactful. It is, but the vaccination rate is so strong here, and hopefully that'll keep us in check. We've got several more weeks of this. We may see the capacity in the hospitals or the volume of patients increasing significantly. We're ready for that, but we're concerned about it. Larry, thank you so much for being on this show and sharing your experience. I have to tell you, I see patients all the time who've had COVID or have COVID, but I've not had as detailed of a discussion on the description. You could write a short story on this.
Well, it's been an experience, and it's one that I don't want to repeat, but I'm here, so that's the important part.
Do you have plans for the new year? Do you have any resolutions or a bucket list you're going to get?
My resolution is to keep moving forward. I know it's baby steps, and we're going to travel like we did last year. Once I got out and found that I was going to live.
That's great. Well, send us some photos. Thank you so much for joining us today. Our guest was Larry Cole. I'd like to thank Mike Cutler from CAT TV, Ray Smith from Southwestern Vermont Healthcare, and Ashley Jowett from Southwestern Vermont Healthcare. I'm Trey Dobson. Go out and find joy in everything you do, even in the face of adversity, and we'll see you next week.